In this video, we will go through the process of data analysis from start to finish. When it comes to data analysis, the purpose is to tell a story. The way we tell a story is in looking at a visualization or data chart. And that data chart is created by a summary table that we have created from some raw data that was collected. Given that this is the purpose, in order to actually do the process of data analysis, we flip this. So the process of doing data analysis starts with the raw data and looking at the raw data and saying, what do I want to know about this data? Because that's ultimately what's going to be my story, is what I want to know. So then I take the raw data, and knowing what my story is and what chart I plan on using, I'm going to create a summary table that will then allow me to create a chart that will then let me tell a story. So the data analysis process starts with thinking about the end in mind. What do I want to tell? What story am I looking for? I might find out it's a different story at the end of the day, but I'm deciding on what data ahead of time and what chart I want to show ahead of time, rather than just starting in and just starting to create summary tables. Because if I start by thinking about what data I want and what story I might want to tell at the end, my summary table will get created a lot more efficiently, and then my chart will get created a lot more efficiently. So as we begin this process, we're going to begin with the raw data and think about what it is I want to say about this data. What information do I want to include? What do I not want to include? As I begin data analysis, I'm going to look at the raw data and see what do I want to know about this data. In this case, I have a movie rating set of raw data, and I have a bunch of columns that I've already taken a look at and seen what do those columns mean and how am I going to use them. So to begin with, I know that one of the main things that I'm going to want to know is an average rating for something. So I know I'm going to use the rating column for finding the average rating. I'm also interested in a breakdown by gender. How do the genders compare? And I want to know movies, but there's so many movies here, it might be better to single out some movies. And I know that from the time that this data was collected in 1997, 1998, there were a group of movies that were released in that about 10-year span. Before then, the Batman movies, and I see one here, Batman Forever. I'm thinking that all those movies are included, all four of them. So I'm going to compare and see how did the different genders rate the Batman movies over the course of those years that they were released, and how did that rating differ by gender. So to recap, I'm going to find the average ratings for the 4 Batman movies, and I'm going to group them by gender. And that means I'm going to be comparing the ratings of males and females. And since I'm going to be doing a comparison like this, my best choice for a chart is going to be a bar chart. I can have pairs of bars for each movie that will show the difference in average rating between the two genders. And then I can tell the story based on that. So I'm always going to think about what I want to know and what chart I want to use to show that off. And then I can tell the story after I've created the chart and see if the story matched up to what I thought might be the case. And the story, remember, is just an explanation as to the reasons why the chart looks the way it does. So at this point, I can create my summary table that will then create the chart that I want, knowing now that I want the average ratings for the 4 Batman movies, and I want to group them by gender, because I want to be comparing the ratings between. So I've created a copy of the raw data, and then I'm started a pivot table, and I'm going to now create that pivot table with the data that I want, which means I'm creating the table for a breakdown of average rating by gender for the 4 Batman movies. So I'm going to add in the movies to the pivot table, and it's going to take a little bit of time to load. It's going through 66,000 pieces of information. And then I'm going to filter out all the movies except for those 4. So I'm ready to go and filter. I'm going to clear out all these movies. And then I'm going to select the Batman movies. And apparently, looks like it's okay. I've got all 4 of them. Now I'm going to click OK, and it should filter out everything that's not one of those 4. And there it is. Now I need to actually add the values. So I'm going to add the values for rating. And I'm going to wait for that to load, and then I'm going to change the summarize by to average, because that's what I want. And once I have that, now I can break it down by gender by adding that as the columns. And now I have my table. The only problem with my table is that the current order here is based on alphabetical order, which is by the actual text, which is not the order they were released in. It was actually Batman, then Batman Returns, then Batman Forever, then Batman and Robin. I would prefer to have them in that order so that I could see if there's some trend as the movies got newer to that time period. I can do that though, luckily, with the data I have here, because year is available in the data set. So I'm going to add in year to the values, and I'm going to change it to average. Now each movie has the same release year, so what's going to happen is when I put average of year, it's actually going to show me the proper year of release. So that's the accurate year. Now what I can do is actually sort this by the year, and I'll just use the grand total as an example. And that way it's now sorted in the order that they were released. As soon as it does it, there it is. So now it's sorted in the year it was released, and I'm ready to create the chart for this data. I'm now ready to create my chart. So to do that though, I'm going to start by copying and pasting this data into a new sheet, and I'm going to copy and paste just the values. And the reason is because when I create my chart, there's going to be 2 bars for each of the 4 movies, and those bars are going to be different colors, and so there will be a legend to tell them apart. And the legend always uses information from the sheet itself. It'll use this cell here, which will change to female average, and this cell here, which will change to male average. That way, when somebody looks at the chart and sees the legend, they can tell what color means what in the chart. So I'm also going to hide the 2 year columns because I don't need them, and now I can select my data and then create my chart. And right away Google Sheets recognizes that I would like a bar chart, so I'm just going to leave it that way. My legend is accurate. There's still some things I got to do. I got to change the title to recognize, or to be more descriptive and accurate. I got to add titles to the 2 axes. I got to change this axis so it starts at 0. So I'm going to go to customization to do all that stuff. For the title, I'm going to remember how I created the pivot table, which means this is the average rating for Batman movies. By adults, and then I'm going to say females versus males. Okay. Remember, when I was creating my chart, I filtered out all the movies except for Batman movies. I calculated average ratings. We broke it down by males and females, and I filtered out anybody under the age of 18, which usually we consider adults. So now when I hit enter, it updates the title in the chart preview. Now I'm going to scroll down, and for the horizontal axis, I'm going to change this to Batman movies so that we can recognize what those movies represent. Now I'm going to switch this to the left vertical, and I got a couple of things to do. We're going to first give a title of average rating, and then I'm going to change the minimum to 0 so that we start at 0, so these bars actually mean what we think they mean. It's really for accuracy's sake that these bars should be proportionally the same. And then we're ready to go. There's nothing else we need to do. It's all, we got a descriptive title, titles for both the axes. Axis starts at 0, we have an accurate legend. We can now insert the chart, and we can do things like increase the size of the chart and maybe increase the size of this just to make it look a little bit better. Might decrease that just a little bit so it stays on one line. But that way we can get a more accurate picture of the chart. It's now time to tell the story of this data. We can look at several features of the data and then pick one and then talk about why that particular feature appears in the data. We're really looking for the story behind the data, not just a description of what we see. Certainly we do have to be able to describe what we see, but then we have to be able to also explain what we can't see and why that data might be the way it is. And we don't really know, and there's maybe not even a right answer. We're not concerned about being right. We're really doing data analysis when we think about the reasons why the data looks the way it does. So in this chart we can see a few things that we can take a look at and maybe consider. We see, first of all, that if we look at the two trends between males and females, that the males continually steadily go down as the movies get newer and newer. That is, as the series continues on, because these movies are listed in order of release. Whereas the females do this yo-yoing, where the first one is very highly rated, the second one not as highly rated, the third one higher, not quite back up to the level of the first one, and then the fourth one is down below the second. So that's one possibility. We can also see how close the two are for each movie, and they're relatively close for 3 out of the 4. It's this big gap here that might be interesting to talk about. And that, I think, is where we're going to focus. So we're going to look at this big gap, and we see that for Batman Forever, females much higher rated than males. Females are up here about 3, probably about 3 1/3 or so, and males are right about 2.5, maybe a little bit more than that, 2.6. So it's a pretty big gap, almost a 1-point gap in average rating. So we're going to explain why the data might look that way. We're now ready to fully tell the story. Remember, we're looking at the large difference between male and female average rating for Batman Forever. And why is that the way it is? The first thing that stands out to me is that in the first 2 movies, Michael Keaton was Batman, and in the third movie, Batman Forever, had Val Kilmer as Batman. When you change a role like that, where it's still the same character but you're played by a new person, there's always a curiosity amongst some groups to see how they played it, and maybe they received it a little bit better than Michael Keaton playing Batman. That could be. It could also be that the other Batman movies did not develop a love story like this one did. In the first 2, the love story was there, but it was really very minor, a minor portion of the plot, whereas Batman Forever had a love story that was an intricate part, or an integral part of the plot. In Batman and Robin, there was no love story. Batman was already in a relationship. There was nothing to do with that. So the focus was solely on Batman and Robin and their relationship, um, and developing as a team. So um, I think that could be also why females liked this better than males. The last idea was that this was the first Batman movie that had Robin in it, who was played by Chris O'Donnell. Um, that could have driven female average up. So any of those could be the possibility. Um, it's not important that we're right because I don't know that we could figure out if we were right. The main thing is trying to make sense of why the data is the way it is, and that's pretty much all there is to um, doing data analysis. We come up with an idea of something we want to learn more about. We grab data and create a summary table that will then become a chart that we can then tell a story about.